Vienna, 1907. Just as the gas lamps flickered to life outside Schönbrunn Palace and the frost on the iron gates began to melt into the gravel, Princess Philena Prescott stood stiffly in her ivory-stitched gown, the satin bodice too tight for breath. Her gloves were damp with sweat, her veil twisted between her fingers. The imperial chapel smelled of beeswax and roses, but she barely noticed. She was to be engaged that night to Prince Dietmar of Hohenzollern, a man whose smile never reached his eyes. "You will do this," her mother had said, voice clipped like her heels on the marble floor. "You will not disgrace your father's alliance." The Austro-Hungarian court needed the German match. Her father, Duke Harold Prescott, though English by blood, had served loyally in Emperor Franz Joseph's court for 2 decades. Philena, half English, half Hungarian, was the perfect bargaining piece. And Dietmar, heir to a minor but ambitious Prussian duchy, had made his preferences clear: obedience, beauty, and silence. She'd already failed him on the last 2. "Princess," came a low voice behind her. Not her maid, not her mother's lady-in-waiting. She turned. The palace guard who stood in the archway wore the dark blue of the emperor's personal detail. He was tall, broad-shouldered, but not stiff like the others. His mouth twitched uncertain, not cruel. His eyes were dark as river stones, and just as deep. "You dropped this," he said, holding out a folded scrap of paper. It was not hers. Philena took it anyway. The moment their fingers touched, the air cracked. She looked up sharply. He dropped his gaze, stepped back. "I'm sorry," he said, voice softer now. "They said you were looking pale. I was told to escort you to the garden." She blinked. "I wasn't." But she didn't finish the sentence. Her corset had her ribs in a vice. The chapel was too warm. And anything, was better than standing here waiting to be handed like a gift to a man who bruised her wrist last week for speaking out of turn. "Yes," she said. "Take me." They walked in silence through the side corridor, skirts swishing, boots echoing. It wasn't until they passed the mosaic of St. Leopold that she spoke again. "What's your name?" He hesitated. "Aurelian Roth." She turned that over slowly. "You're not Viennese." "No, princess," he said. "My father is from Brasov. My mother was born near Lake Balaton." "Magyar." He nodded. "So was she. Half, at least." But that half was hidden now beneath layers of English polish and imperial lace. They reached the garden. The air was cold and fresh, and the last of the frost clung to the stone bench. Philena sat anyway. Aurelian stood a polite distance away, hands clasped behind his back. "I never got a letter," she said. He blinked. "Pardon. The note. It wasn't mine." He hesitated, then reached into the inside of his tunic and pulled out a second folded paper. "This one is." She stared. "It's not treason," he said quickly. "But I know it's not proper." She took the paper, unfolded it. It was written in Hungarian. A poem, just 4 lines, about a bird trapped in a golden cage. She looked up sharply. "You wrote this?" He nodded, jaw tight. "I've seen you walking the West Hall. Always alone. You could lose your post for this." "I know. And still you gave it to me." He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Philena stood. Her skirts brushed his boots. "You're very foolish," she whispered. He smiled. Not cruelly. Just enough. "So I've been told." They didn't touch. They didn't need to. The air between them hummed with something dangerous and alive. That night, at the engagement banquet, Dietmar drank deeply and whispered crude things behind his goblet. Philena kept her eyes on the candlelight, her hands folded tightly in her lap. When the waltz began, Dietmar did not offer his hand. He preferred cards and cigars to dancing. Philena slipped away. In the corridor behind the ballroom, Aurelian waited, face shadowed by the oil lamps. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know." And then, like a match struck in the dark, she took his hand. Just for a moment. Just long enough to remember what it felt like to choose. The next morning, the bruises on her arm from Dietmar's grip were darker. By noon, she had found Aurelian again. "You've served here long?" 3 years, he said. "I was assigned to protect the Archduchess, but she died last spring. And now me." He nodded. "Do you obey every order?" His eyes met hers. "Not all." She stepped closer. "Will you help me?" "With what?" "Escaping this." He didn't answer right away. He looked at her, really looked. At the stiffness in her shoulders. The mark on her wrist. The hunger in her voice. "Yes," he said. That night, Aurelian brought her a map. A real one, not the decorative kind that hung in the palace study. He pointed to the Danube, to the half-forgotten estate her mother had once owned in the hills. No one goes there anymore, he said. It's outside the city, near the Serbian border. I remember, she whispered. There's a stream behind the orchard. His fingers brushed hers as he folded the map. Not by accident. 3 days, he said. At dawn. I'll bring a carriage. Go through the servants' hallway. We're plain clothes. Won't they suspect you? I'll say you're with the Archduchess's niece. She leaves for Budapest that day. She nodded. But the next morning, Dietmar summoned her early. She found herself alone with him in the East Gallery. You've been walking with the guards, he said coolly. She kept her face still. I walk where I please. Not anymore. He grabbed her arm again, tighter this time. Her gasp echoed off the marble. She didn't cry out. She looked him in the eye. You are not my husband yet. You'll obey me before the vows, he said, or you won't live to say them. That night, she sent Aurelian a note, hidden under a tray of tea. Just 2 words. It's worse. He understood. On the dawn of the 3rd day, she stood in the servants' corridor in a wool cloak and scuffed boots. Her heart thundered. The carriage came. Aurelian opened the door himself. His coat was plain, his cap low. Your Highness, he said. She climbed in. They didn't speak until the city was behind them. I should have done this sooner, she said. I would have said yes then too. A small smile. Quiet, but real. They rode in silence, the road bumping beneath them, the cold air sweet with pine. But by late afternoon, Aurelian tensed. Up ahead, 2 riders in black coats. Imperial insignia. They must have followed the carriage, he said. Philena's blood ran cold. He pulled the reins sharply. Hold on. They veered off the main road, into the trees. Branches scraped the glass. The horses whinnied but obeyed. Behind them, hoofbeats. Faster, she cried. Aurelian snapped the reins. I know. They broke through the trees into a clearing, and then the world tilted. The carriage will hit a stone. Splintered. Philena was thrown sideways. Aurelian jumped out, sword drawn. The riders closed in. One of them dismounted. Dietmar, you thought you could run? He snarled. With a servant? Aurelian stood between them, blade steady. She's not yours. Dietmar laughed. Drew his own weapon. You'll die for this. I'd rather die than give her back. And then steel rang against steel. The duel was fast. Brutal. Dietmar was trained. But Aurelian fought like a man with something to lose. He took a cut to the thigh, another to the shoulder. But in the end, it was Dietmar who fell. Not dead, but bleeding, groaning, humiliated. Philena rushed forward. Aurelian staggered. She caught him. Come on, she said. We're close. They left Dietmar on the forest floor, shouting for his men. But Aurelian's blow had shattered the prince's pride and his sword arm. He would not follow again. By nightfall, they reached the estate. It was overgrown, empty, but safe. She cleaned his wounds with water from the stream. He winced, but didn't flinch. You were ready to die, she whispered. He looked at her. I was ready to live. With you. She took his hand. This time, she didn't let go. The orchard had gone wild in the years since anyone tended it. Branches sagged under the weight of unharvested fruit, and vines clung stubbornly to the crumbling stone wall that had once marked the boundary of the estate's inner garden. Aurelian leaned against the trunk of a pear tree, his thigh wrapped in torn linen that had once been the hem of Philena's cloak. She knelt nearby, coaxing a fire from damp, kindling with hands red from cold. The chimney's blocked, she said, her voice low but steady. The smoke keeps curling back into the hall. I'll clear it when the bleeding stops, Aurelian replied. His face was pale, but his tone was even. You'll do no such thing. She fanned the embers with a folded scrap of parchment, her gaze fixed on the flicker of flame. You've already done more than anyone ever has. He closed his eyes. There's no honor in that if I can't keep you warm. You're not another servant, she said. So stop speaking like one. The fire caught. A brief, reluctant glow. Neither of them mentioned the bruises on her forearms or the knife she now kept beneath her bodice. The orchard was quiet, but not safe. They both knew the reach of the court extended far beyond Vienna's walls. Philena stood and dusted her skirts. There's a root cellar under the west wing. If the boards haven't collapsed, there might be preserved goods. I'll come with you. You'll stay where you are, she said. If you fall again, I won't be able to lift you. She returned an hour later with a jar of pickled cabbage, a sack of barley, and 2 cracked candlesticks. Her hair was damp from the mist, her cheeks flushed with effort. He said nothing, just reached for the barley. His hands trembled as he poured it into a dented pot. The days that followed fell into a rhythm born of necessity. She gathered dry branches, mended a broken shutter, and swept the hearth with a broom she fashioned from twigs. He limped through the overgrown stables, coaxing the old pump into motion with a rusted crank and oil from the last of the lamp reserves. Late on the fourth night, as a storm clawed across the hills, Philena found him seated in the doorway, his coat pulled tight, watching the rain. "The chimney's clear," he said, "and I found a trapdoor in the pantry. There's a tunnel beneath it." She sat beside him, her knees brushing his. "Where does it lead?" "East, by the map. Toward the hills near Paich." "Another escape route," she murmured. "Or a hiding place." The silence between them stretched, filled only by the sound of rain striking the flagstones. "Have you ever loved anyone?" Philena asked quietly. Aurelian didn't answer at once. He folded his hands, stared into the dark. "I once thought I did. A girl in the barracks town. She spoke 6 languages and played the violin. But when her father arranged her marriage, she didn't argue. Did you?" "I wasn't brave then." She reached over and took his hand. "Not out of pity, out of recognition. I never loved anyone," she said. "I never had the choice." He turned toward her, eyes searching hers. "You do now?" Her breath caught. Not because of the words, but because of the way he said them, without urgency, without demand. As if he meant to give her the space to walk away, even now. But she didn't. She leaned into him, her forehead resting against his shoulder. He tensed just for a heartbeat, then wrapped his arm gently around her. They stayed like that until the storm passed. By the next morning, the clouds had cleared. Sunlight struck the orchard in golden shafts, and the air smelled of wet earth and wood smoke. Philena stood at the edge of the garden, watching the tree branches sway. She heard his steps behind her, slower now, but steadier. "I sent a letter," he said, stopping beside her. "To a man I served with in the garrison at Gier. He's no friend of Dietmar's. If we can get there, he'll hide us. And after that, there's a village west of the Croatian border. No soldiers, no titles, just land and quiet." She looked at him. "I'd be no one there. You'd be yourself. And you?" He hesitated. "Whatever you need me to be." She traced the line of her collar with one gloved finger, eyes distant. "I'd plant apricots," she said, "and learn to make bread without burning it. I'd build a door that doesn't creak," he said, "and a stove that doesn't smoke." She smiled. Then her expression shifted. "There's something I didn't tell you," she said. "Before we fled." He waited. "My father was offered a post in Sarajevo. He was meant to leave in May. He wanted me to come, to smooth things with the Bosnian families. But I refused." "Why?" "Because Dietmar would have followed. And I thought, if I stayed in Vienna, I'd be closer to escape." She turned to face him fully. "I didn't plan on anyone helping me." He reached up and brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You shouldn't have had to." That night, they slept in the same room for the first time. Not out of desire, but necessity. The firewood was dwindling, and the wind had breached the shutters again. She lay beside him on the mattress they had dragged from the guest quarters, her back to the hearth, his warmth behind her. "Do you miss the court?" he asked softly. "I miss the books. Not the dresses. They never fit." He was quiet for a while. "Do you think they'll come again?" "They'll try. What will we do?" She turned toward him, her hand resting over his heart. "We'll be ready." The snow came early. Not a dusting, but a true snowfall, thick, deliberate, soft as linen and just as heavy. It covered the orchard floor in a quiet that made Philena draw her shawl tighter, though the cold hadn't yet pierced her bones. Aurelian stood beside the edge of the stable roof, hammer in hand, eyes scanning the tree line. He wasn't looking for the weather. "They'll wait for spring," he said, watching the wind move through the pines. "No one risks the passes when the snow's fresh." Philena nodded, her gaze skimming the hill beyond the orchard. "That gives us time." He glanced down at her, hair damp with snowmelt. "You've been quiet since yesterday." She didn't answer at first. Her fingers curled around the strap of the oilskin satchel she'd slung over her shoulder. The root cellar had a ledger. Aurelian lowered the hammer. "What kind of ledger?" "Financial. Receipts. Supply orders. It's from the last steward. There's a name I recognized." "Someone local?" Philena looked up. "Countess Erzbet Karoli." His brow furrowed. "I've heard of her. That family owns the land west of here, past the ravine." She was my mother's cousin. I met her once, before the war in Bosnia. She used to trade orchards with my grandfather. He gave her the rights to the walnut grove in exchange for a dowry gift she never used. Aurelian stepped down from the ladder, boots crunching in the snow. If she's alive, she might shelter us. She's alive, Philena said. The ledger's dated last autumn, and there's a signed receipt for sugar and salt. Then we go to her. Philena hesitated. She's a loyalist, and no friend of the German prince's. If she helps us, it will be out of obligation, not affection. Obligation is enough, Aurelian said. If she knew your mother, she won't send you back to Vienna. Philena turned toward the house. We'll need to leave at first light. The ravine path will freeze by midday. That night, Aurelian set the last of the barley to soak. Philena sat beside the fire, a single candle burning low behind her. Pinned to her lap was the sleeve of a wool blouse she'd taken from an old trunk. She was mending it in silence. Aurelian studied her hands. You sew like a soldier, he said gently. Philena didn't look up. My governess was English. She said a lady should know how to mend what she breaks. He tilted his head. Did you break things often? I broke a window once. I threw a silver tray through it. She drew the thread through with care. It wasn't the tray's fault. He smiled faintly. What was? I had just learned what my brother did to a chambermaid. My father paid to send the girl to Pest. The rest of the staff was told she was dismissed for theft. Aurelian's expression darkened. What happened to your brother? He's in Cairo now, managing a railway contract. My father said he needed distance. She knotted the thread and bit it loose with her teeth. When I confronted him, he laughed. Said I could do nothing without a husband. There was a long silence. Then Aurelian said, You've done more without one than most do with 5. Philena met his eyes. You won't always be able to protect me. No, he said, but I'll never stop trying. She stood, folding the mended blouse. Her voice dropped. If she refuses us, we'll have to cross into Croatia. I know. Philena placed the blouse beside her satchel. I saw a map carved into a table leg in the pantry. Someone marked a road through the timber forest. It doesn't appear on the imperial maps. Old smuggler's path, Aurelian said. The kind they used to run salt and tobacco. Dangerous. She met his gaze. Do you trust me to remember it? With my life. They left before dawn. The horses were restless in the cold, but obedient. Philena rode astride, her skirts pinned up under a heavy cloak, while Aurelian led them through the orchard gate and into the narrow pass beyond. By midday, the sun had turned the snow to slush, and their coats steamed with sweat. The path twisted through birch groves and creaking wooden fences, until finally, beyond a narrow bend, a gate appeared iron, rusted, flanked by 2 stone lions worn down by time. Philena dismounted and approached the bell cord. She pulled once. A minute passed, then another. Finally, a servant with a red scarf tucked beneath her collar opened the gate. Her eyes widened at the sight of Philena. Lady Prescott? She asked in Hungarian. Philena nodded. I've come to see the Countess. The servant hesitated. She doesn't receive visitors without notice. Philena stepped forward. Tell her the daughter of Lady Margit is at the gate. The servant disappeared. Aurelian remained silent, his hand resting near the hilt of the blade hidden under his coat. The gate creaked again. This time, the Countess herself appeared tall, silver-haired, wrapped in a cloak of dark green wool. Her eyes, sharp beneath arched brows, scanned Philena from head to hem. I thought you were dead, she said. Philena bowed her head. Not yet. The Countess turned her gaze to Aurelian. And this? My guard, Philena said. A guard who travels with you unchaperoned and carries a soldier's blade? He's the reason I still draw breath. The Countess studied Aurelian for a long moment, then turned on her heel. Bring the horses to the side stable. The house is warm. They followed her through the courtyard, past a withered fountain and a hedge trimmed into the shape of a falcon. Inside, the manor was dim but dry, with thick drapes and the scent of old lavender. A fire burned in the drawing-room hearth, and 2 chairs had been pulled close. Philena sat first, only when the Countess gestured. I've seen the court bulletins, the older woman said. They said you were to marry the Hohenzollern heir. I refused, Philena said. The Countess lifted a brow. And what did the prince think of that? He tried to make me change my mind. With force. I see, the Countess said. And the court? They'll call it treason. Or madness. The Countess sipped from a glass of cordial. And you came here not to beg, but to be sheltered. I came because my mother once trusted you, and I do not trust many. The Countess turned again to Aurelian. You're willing to die for her? I already nearly did. The older woman studied the fire a moment, then stood. You'll stay 2 weeks. No longer. After that, I'll arrange passage south. There are still men who owe me favors. Philena rose. Why help us? Because your mother once gave me something I never repaid, a place to go when I had nowhere else. She turned to the door. You found love in a time that offers none. That makes you dangerous. And necessary. Philena reached for Aurelian's hand. This time, even the Countess didn't look away. Aurelian had never worn anything so fine. The Countess had sent for her late husband's winter coat, a heavy, dark blue wool with silver buttons dulled to pewter, and it hung awkwardly on his frame, made for a broader man. Still, it was warm, and when he stepped into the snow-dusted courtyard where Philena waited, the frost did not bite as cruelly. She turned when she heard his boots crunch behind her. It suits you poorly, she said, eyes tracing the sleeves. You say that like it's a comfort. Philena glanced toward the stable roofs where a pair of jackdaws had nested in the eaves. It is. I don't want you to look like them. He followed her gaze to the liveried attendants who had arrived that morning, local men in Countess Caroli's service, quiet and clean-shaven, their loyalty forged through debt and favor. They're watching us, he said. They're watching me, she corrected. You're safer in their eyes. A foreign guard with no coat of arms is no threat unless he speaks. I won't give them cause. You already have, she said. You stand beside me. That alone is enough. The Countess had offered sanctuary, but not without conditions. Philena was to remain within the estate's bounds. No letters sent, no names spoken. Silence, in exchange for protection. Aurelian adjusted the collar of his coat. She fears reprisal. She fears scandal, Philena said. If Vienna names me a fugitive, she'll be drawn into it whether she helps me or not. Aurelian's jaw flexed. Then we leave sooner. Philena didn't answer. Her hands were tucked into fur-lined gloves, but her shoulders were tense beneath the weight of her borrowed cloak. He stepped closer. What did she say to you this morning? Philena hesitated, then met his eyes. She wants me to marry again. A local baron. Widowed. No children. Loyal to her house. He felt the air pull from his lungs. Did you agree? I didn't laugh, if that's what you're asking. Her voice was calm, but her mouth tightened. She thinks I'm too visible to vanish without a name to hide behind. You're not hers to barter. No, I'm still my father's, she said. And he's still alive. They walked along the eastern path that skirted the orchard wall, where the snow had melted in patches, revealing the dark earth beneath. Aurelian stopped beneath the bare branches of a linden tree. When I was a boy, he said, there was an old man in our village who carved whistles from linden twigs. He said the tree only sang when it grew near water. Philena looked up. There's a stream below the hill. It fed the old cisterns. He bent, snapped a thin branch, and began peeling the bark with the tip of his knife. She watched his hands move slow, deliberate, practiced. You've done this before, she said. Not in years. But the memory stays in the fingers. She sat on a low stone, her gloved hands resting in her lap. If we fled tonight, how far would we make it before they noticed? By dawn, we could reach the river. But not the pass. Too much snow. And if we waited for the thaw, he looked at her, then we'd have a real chance. Philena lowered her eyes. She won't let us stay that long. He handed her the whistle. It was rough, but it made a soft, breathy note when she blew into it. You'll know if we're near water now, he said. She smiled faintly, tucking the whistle into her cloak. Perhaps I'll use it to call you when I can't find the words. He opened his mouth to speak, but the bell at the manor's front gate rang sharp and sudden. Philena stood. They rarely use it. They returned quickly to the main hall. Countess Caroli stood by the window, her expression unreadable. The servant who had answered the gate lingered near the door. There's a rider from Vienna, the Countess said. He carries a sealed letter. Philena's breath caught. From whom? He would not say, but the seal is Prescott. Philena stepped forward. I'll see it. The Countess held up her hand. I already opened it. Philena's spine stiffened. You had no right. I had every right. You are under my roof, and I will not be caught off guard. She handed Philena the letter. The wax seal had been cracked cleanly. The handwriting was her father's neat, deliberate, shaped by years of diplomacy and command. Philena read it silently. No one spoke. When she finished, she folded the paper and tucked it into her sleeve. Well, Aurelian asked. He offers an annulment of the engagement, she said. He says Dietmar has withdrawn the suit. Aurelian's eyes narrowed. Withdrawn? After all that? Philena nodded. He's been recalled to Berlin. Too public a scandal. My father suggests I return quietly to the countryside. He'll arrange a small pension. An exile in all but name, Aurelian said. Philena turned to the countess. Does this change your terms? The older woman gave a slow nod. It makes your presence less dangerous, but no less inconvenient. I admire your resolve, the countess said. But resolve does not keep men from gossiping. And you are still watched. Philena stepped closer to Aurelian. We won't stay longer than necessary. The countess's gaze flicked between them. I'll send word to a friend in Zagreb. He has land and no allegiance to Vienna. If you leave before the river floods, you'll make it in 2 days. Philena extended her hand. Thank you. The countess did not shake it. I do this for Margit, not for you. That evening, Aurelian found Philena in the library, where the coals had nearly died down. She was tracing the spine of a book with one finger, not reading, just touching. When we reach Zagreb, he said, what will you be? She looked at him. No longer a princess. Not a wife. Not anyone's daughter. He stepped into the light. You'll be mine. Her eyes didn't waver. And you? Yours, he said. Entirely. She reached for him then, not cautiously, but with a clarity that took his breath. Her hands found his, and her voice was steady. I don't want a title, she said. I want a name that can't be taken. Then take mine, he said. When we reach that border. She nodded once. I will.